The dying station. The morning alarm hadn't worked in 3 months, but Zara Volkov's internal clock had adapted to the station's rhythm of mechanical groans and electrical hums. She rolled out of her narrow bunk as the atmospheric processors wheezed to life, a sound that had once been a gentle whisper, but now resembled an old man's labored breathing. Another day of keeping the dead alive. "Good morning, sunshine," she muttered to her reflection in the cracked mirror, running fingers through copper-red hair that had grown wild from months without proper cutting tools. Her green eyes stared back, still sharp despite the fatigue that seemed permanently etched beneath them. The Kepler research station had been her home for 4 years, her prison for the last 2, since the supply ships stopped coming. Originally designed to house 30 researchers studying the bizarre quantum fluctuations near the Helix Nebula, it now sheltered only her and barely managed that. "Nova status report," she called out while pulling on her maintenance coveralls, the fabric patched with strips of emergency sealant that gave her the appearance of a Technicolor scarecrow. The AI's voice crackled through the speakers, distorted by power fluctuations. "Good morning, Zara. Current station integrity stands at 67%. Life support systems operational but declining. Water recycling efficiency down to 42%. And I'm afraid the coffee synthesizer is staging what appears to be a mechanical revolt." Zara snorted. "At least it has spirit. What's today's crisis?" "The primary reactor coolant system has developed what I can only describe as performance anxiety. It's working, but not enthusiastically. Also, Section C is reporting atmospheric pressure drops. I suggest we investigate before it becomes more than a suggestion." She grabbed her toolkit, a collection of salvaged parts and improvised tools that would make any certified engineer weep. "You know, Nova, most AIs don't develop sarcasm as their primary coping mechanism. Most AIs aren't slowly degrading alongside their only human companion on a station that's held together by stubbornness and recycled duct tape. I'm adapting to my environment." The corridors of Kepler Station had once gleamed with polished metal and soft lighting. Now they resembled the digestive tract of some vast mechanical beast, all exposed conduits and flickering emergency illumination. Zara's footsteps echoed in the hollow spaces, a lonely percussion that had become the soundtrack to her existence. Section C greeted her with a gentle hiss, the sound of atmosphere finding new ways to escape into space. She traced the source to a stress fracture in the outer hull, probably caused by the micrometeorite shower last week. The station's shields had failed months ago, leaving them vulnerable to every piece of cosmic debris that wandered by. "Just a small breach," she told Nova while applying emergency sealant. "Nothing we can't handle." Define handle. Because my calculations suggest we're running out of both sealant and optimism. Zara worked in silence, her hands moving with practiced efficiency born from necessity. Each repair was a small victory against the entropy that threatened to claim her floating tomb. She'd become intimate with every bolt, wire, and circuit board on the station, learning its moods and quirks like a musician learning their instrument. The work was mindless enough to let her thoughts drift. She remembered her last conversation with Dr. Petrov before the evacuation order came through. "Stay," he'd said, "just until the next supply run. Someone needs to maintain the station's position, keep the research data safe." That was 2 years ago. The next supply run had never come, and the research data had long since been transmitted to Earth. But she'd stayed. Where else could she go? By midday, she'd patched the hull breach, rerouted power around a blown relay, and coaxed the water recycling system into producing something that was technically drinkable. The station groaned around her like a living thing in pain, and she patted a bulkhead affectionately. "Hang in there, old girl. We've made it this far." "Zara." Nova's voice had changed, dropping its usual sardonic tone. "I'm detecting something unusual. Long-range sensors are picking up a signal." She froze, wrench halfway to another loose bolt. "What kind of signal?" "Human." distress frequency. It's faint, but it's definitely human. The wrench clattered to the deck. In 2 years of isolation, the long-range sensors had detected nothing but cosmic background radiation and the occasional automated probe passing through distant sectors. No ships, no transmissions, no signs that humanity still existed beyond this floating metal shell. "Are you sure?" Her voice came out as a whisper. "I'm running diagnostics now, but yes, it's a standard emergency beacon. Automated distress call from a vessel approximately 18 hours away at current drift patterns." Zara's legs gave out, and she slumped against the corridor wall. 18 hours. Another human being, 18 hours away and in trouble. The implications crashed over her like a tidal wave. Someone was out there. Someone who might have news, supplies, or just another voice that wasn't filtered through failing speakers, but also someone who might bring trouble, disease, or simply more problems than her dying station could handle. Nova. What's our current capability for hosting guests? Define hosting. If you mean providing basic life support for additional humans, we might manage 1 or 2 people for a few weeks. If you mean doing so while maintaining current operations and not dying horribly, the numbers become significantly less optimistic. She closed her eyes, pressing palms against them until she saw stars. This was the choice she'd been dreading and hoping for in equal measure. Safety lay in isolation. She'd managed alone this long, and her carefully rationed supplies might last another year if she was careful. But that distress signal represented something she'd almost forgotten existed. Possibility. Can we reach them? The station's positioning thrusters are functional, though I wouldn't call them reliable. We could adjust our orbit to intercept, but it would use considerable fuel and put additional stress on already compromised systems. And if we don't? Their signal suggests critical life support failure. Without intervention, they have perhaps 6 hours before the problem solves itself. Zara sat in the flickering corridor light, listening to her station breathe its labored breaths around her. Somewhere in the void, strangers were dying. She could save them, possibly, but it might mean hastening her own end. The smart choice was clear. Preserve resources, maintain systems, survive alone. But she was so tired of being alone. Nova, begin orbital adjustment calculations. Prepare docking bay 3 for emergency arrival. Are you certain? The risks. I'm not leaving them to die in the dark. She stood, straightening her shoulders. Besides, you said it yourself. We're held together by stubbornness. Might as well use it for something worthwhile. Very well. Adjusting course. Zara, it's been quite some time since we've had visitors. She managed a smile as she headed for the docking bay preparations. Then we'd better dust off our manners. And Nova, try to fix that coffee synthesizer. If we're going to meet new people, we should at least offer them something warm. As the station slowly turned toward the distant signal, Zara felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Anticipation. In 18 hours, her world would change forever. When strangers become hope. The ship that limped into Kepler Station's docking bay looked like it had been chewed up by space itself and spat out for good measure. Scorch marks decorated its hull like abstract art, and Zara counted at least 3, emergency patches that probably shouldn't be holding but somehow were. The vessel shuddered to a halt with a sound that made her wince, metal grinding against metal in ways that would give any engineer nightmares. Well, Nova commented through the bay's speakers, they certainly know how to make an entrance. Zara stood at the observation window, her hands pressed against the reinforced glass, as she watched the airlock cycle through its sequence. She'd spent the last 18 hours in a frenzy of preparation, clearing debris from the docking bay, double-checking life support systems, and trying to remember how to interact with other humans. The last part proved surprisingly difficult after 2 years of conversations limited to Nova's digital sarcasm. The inner airlock door hissed open, and 2 figures stumbled out. The first was a tall man with graying brown hair and the kind of weathered face that spoke of too many years spent staring into the void. His blue jumpsuit bore the faded insignia of the merchant marine, and he moved with the careful gait of someone nursing injuries. Behind him came a younger man, compact and wiry, with dark skin and intelligent eyes that immediately began cataloging everything in sight. "Permission to come aboard?" the older man called out, his voice carrying the crisp authority of someone accustomed to command. "I'm Captain Marcus Reed, and this is my engineer, Finn Blackstone. We received your docking clearance, but I wanted to make proper introductions." Zara realized she'd been staring and quickly activated the bay's intercom. "Granted. I'm Zara Volkov, station engineer and, well, current population." She paused, then added, "Welcome to Kepler Station. Such as it is." Marcus smiled, the expression transforming his stern features. "Ms. Volkov, right now your station looks like paradise. Our life support gave out 12 hours ago, and we've been running on emergency reserves and prayer." "Mostly prayer," Finn added, shouldering a battered toolkit that looked almost as improvised as Zara's. "The reserves ran out about 6 hours." "Back!" Zara met them at the bay entrance, suddenly self-conscious about her patched coveralls and wild hair. "How long since you've had a proper meal, or sleep in actual gravity?" "Define proper," Marcus said. "We've been living on emergency rations for 3 weeks. As for gravity, our artificial system failed right after the life support. We've been floating in our own tin can, slowly suffocating." "Well, you're not suffocating anymore." Zara gestured down the corridor. "Let me show you to quarters first, then we can—" An alarm blared through the station, and Nova's voice cut through the sound with digital urgency. "Zara, we have a problem, a rather significant one." "What now?" She was already moving toward the nearest control panel, muscle memory guiding her through the station's maze of corridors. Marcus and Finn followed, their exhaustion forgotten in the face of immediate crisis. "Primary reactor coolant system has suffered catastrophic failure. We have approximately 40 minutes before core temperature reaches critical levels. After that, well, let's just say the discussion of proper meals becomes academic." Finn whistled low. 40 minutes? That's not much time for a full coolant. System replacement. Replacement? Zara laughed, but there was no humor in it. "We don't have replacement parts. We haven't had replacement parts for anything in 2 years. We make do with what we have." They reached the engineering section, and Marcus surveyed the maze of jury-rigged systems and improvised repairs with the eye of someone who'd seen his share of desperate situations. "What do you need?" "A miracle, mostly." Zara was already pulling up schematics on her portable display. "The coolant pump is seized, probably from running contaminated fluid for too long. I can try to free it, but the backup systems are already offline, and if I can't get it running, the core overheats, and we all become part of the local scenery," Finn finished. He was studying the reactor setup with professional interest. "This is a Yamada-class fusion plant, right? Older model, but solid engineering. I worked on similar systems during my apprenticeship." Zara looked up from her display. "You know these reactors?" "Know them?" "I helped design the Mark 7 upgrade package. Never thought I'd see one of the old models still running." He rolled up his sleeves. "What tools do we have?" Tools was perhaps a generous term for Zara's collection of salvaged equipment. But Finn seemed undaunted. While he and Zara worked to access the coolant pump, Marcus made himself useful by monitoring system status and calling out temperature readings. "Core temp rising through yellow zone," he announced. 32 minutes remaining. The pump housing was corroded worse than Zara had feared. Years of improvised maintenance had taken their toll, and the access panels fought every attempt to remove them. Finn's hands moved with surprising delicacy for someone who'd been floating in zero gravity for weeks, and he talked as he worked. "So you've been alone here for 2 years?" he asked while wrestling with a particularly stubborn bolt. "How do you manage the workload?" "Very carefully," Zara replied, holding a light steady while he worked. "And with a lot of help from Nova. She's the AI that runs most of the automated systems." "She has excellent comedic timing," Marcus called out. 28 minutes, by the way." "I heard that." Nova's voice drifted from the speakers. "And I prefer to think of it as maintaining morale under adverse conditions." Finn managed to free the pump housing, revealing the seized mechanism inside. The coolant had crystallized around the impeller, locking it in place like amber around an ancient insect. "We need to dissolve this buildup without damaging the pump mechanism. Do you have any industrial solvents?" Zara shook her head. "Used the last of them 6 months ago on the water recycling system." "What about alcohol? High-concentration ethanol can dissolve some crystalline deposits." "Nova, do we have any—" "The medical bay has a bottle of surgical ethanol," the AI interrupted. 95% pure. I was saving it for sterilization, but given the circumstances—" "Bring it," Marcus ordered. 24 minutes. What followed was the most delicate operation Zara had ever attempted. While Finn carefully applied solvent to the crystallized deposits, she used precision tools to gently work the impeller free. Marcus called out temperature readings like a countdown to doom, and Nova provided a running commentary that somehow managed to be both helpful and terrifying. "Careful with that alignment," the AI warned. "If the impeller housing cracks, we'll be breathing vacuum in about 6 minutes." "Encouraging as always," Zara muttered, sweat beading on her forehead despite the corridor's chill. "I aim to provide realistic expectations." With 15 minutes remaining, the impeller suddenly broke free, spinning smoothly in Finn's hands. Zara had never been so happy to see a piece of mechanical equipment function properly. "Got it," Finn called out. "Zara, start the feed sequence. Marcus, watch those pressure readings." The coolant system came online with a sound like a deep mechanical sigh. Throughout the station, systems that had been holding their breath suddenly relaxed. Temperature readings dropped steadily back into safe zones, and the emergency lighting switched off. "Well," Marcus said, slumping against a bulkhead, "that was invigorating." Zara found herself laughing, actually laughing, for the first time in months. "Welcome to daily life on Kepler Station. Something's always trying to kill us, but so far, we're ahead on points." "Speaking of which," Nova interjected, "I should mention that our guest's arrival has accelerated several existing problems. Additional life support load, increased power consumption, and we're now using our emergency medical ethanol as coolant solvent." Finn wiped his hands on a rag that had seen better decades. "What's the long-term situation? How long can this station realistically function?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Zara had been avoiding thinking about it for months, but with 2 additional lives depending on the answer, evasion was no longer an option. "Honestly, we're living on borrowed time. The reactor repair bought us maybe 6 months, but the hull, breaches are getting worse, life support is degrading, and we're running out of everything from food to spare parts." She looked at each of them in turn. "I've been alone so long, I'd almost forgotten what it felt like to have help. But I can't ask you to stay and die with me." Marcus and Finn exchanged a look that spoke of years of partnership and shared decisions. "Actually," Marcus said slowly, "we might have a proposition. Our ship is damaged, but it's still spaceworthy. We were heading for the Tau Ceti colonies when our life support failed. There's a small settlement there, nothing fancy, but they're always looking for people with technical skills. And," Finn added, "they have a repair facility that could handle both our ship and potentially some of your station's critical systems. We could evacuate what's salvageable." Zara stared at them. "You're offering to take me with you?" "We're offering you a choice," Marcus said gently. "You can stay here and fight the inevitable alone, or you can come with us and see what else is out there. The colonies aren't paradise, but they're alive, growing, building something new." Zara's voice caught. She'd been alone for so long that the thought of leaving felt like betrayal, of the station, of her duty, of the person she'd become in isolation. But looking at these two strangers who'd risked their lives to save her failing systems, she realized something. She wasn't the same person who'd stayed behind 2 years ago. "What about Nova?" she asked. "Nova comes too," Finn said immediately. "Any colony would be lucky to have an AI with her capabilities, assuming she wants to come." "Oh, I'm definitely coming." Nova's voice carried unmistakable warmth. "I've grown rather fond of you all, and frankly, the idea of expanding my conversational options beyond Zara's increasingly creative profanity is quite appealing." "I don't swear that much," Zara protested. "Yesterday you called the atmospheric processor a stubborn metallic bastard with delusions of functionality." It was being difficult. Marcus chuckled. "I think you'll fit right in with the colonists. So what do you say? Ready for a new adventure?" Zara looked around the corridor. That had been her world for 4 years. Her prison for 2. The emergency lights flickered, and somewhere in the distance, another system announced its distress with a mechanical whine. Kepler Station was dying, had been dying for months. She could stay and die with it, or she could choose to live. How long do we have to prepare? "Our ship needs about a week of repairs before it's ready for the journey," Finn said. "Think that's enough time to pack up your life?" Zara smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. "I don't have much to pack, but there are some things worth saving." She paused, then added, "And some people worth saving too." As they walked back through the station's corridors, planning the evacuation and repairs, Zara realized that the sound she was hearing wasn't just the station's mechanical breathing. It was the sound of possibility, the rhythm of 3 people working together, of conversation and laughter, of a future that stretched beyond these metal walls. She was no longer alone on a dying world. She was part of something new, something hopeful, something alive. And for the first time in 2 years, tomorrow felt like a gift rather than a burden. The stars beyond the viewports seemed brighter somehow, as if they too were eager to see what came next.